The courtroom was a hive of murmurs and whispers, every corner buzzing with the audacity of what was unfolding before their eyes. Seated at the defendant's table was Amelia Carter, a teenager with unruly curls, wearing a simple hoodie and jeans. She clutched a thick stack of papers, her small frame dwarfed by the imposing presence of seasoned attorneys and the grandeur of the courtroom. Judge Theodore Grayson, a man known for his no-nonsense demeanor and sharp wit, leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing as a condescending smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "Miss Carter," he began, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "do you have any idea where you are? This is a court of law, not an after-school debate club." Ripples of laughter echoed across the room, but Amelia stood her ground. Though her cheeks burned with embarrassment, her eyes were resolute. "Your Honor," she began, her voice calm but firm, "if you would allow me to speak." Judge Grayson waved a dismissive hand. "Save it. This court doesn't have time for juvenile antics. I don't even understand why you're standing there." The laughter grew louder, and for a moment, Amelia felt the weight of the room pressing down on her, but then she remembered why she was there. Taking a deep breath, she raised her chin and met the judge's gaze. "Your Honor," she said, her voice unwavering, "I may not look the part, but I assure you, I belong here." The courtroom fell silent, the air thick with tension and disbelief. All eyes were on her, and for a fleeting second, Amelia felt a flicker of doubt. But as she adjusted the papers in her hands and prepared to speak, the fire inside her reignited. She wasn't here to prove her worth. She was here to fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves. 2 weeks earlier, in the cramped confines of her bedroom, Amelia Carter sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a fortress of legal textbooks and yellowed case files. The books weren't hers. They had belonged to her brother James, who had been on the verge of becoming a lawyer before life had other plans. Her best friend Lily lounged on the bed, munching on chips and watching Amelia with a mix of curiosity and concern. "You're 16, Amelia," Lily said, shaking her head. 16. Why are you doing this? You're not a lawyer." Amelia paused, her pencil hovering over a notebook filled with meticulous notes, her brow furrowed as she looked up. "Because someone has to, Lily. Someone has to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves." Lily sighed, her voice softening. "But why you? Why now?" Amelia hesitated, her gaze drifting to a framed photograph on her desk. It was of her and James, taken on the day he had been accepted into law school. His smile was broad, his arm draped protectively around her shoulders. She had idolized him, and when he was wrongfully accused and convicted of a crime he didn't commit, her world had shattered. "I have to do this," Amelia said finally, her voice trembling with determination. "For James. For people like him." Back in the courtroom, Amelia's voice rang clear as she began her argument, her words laced with confidence and conviction. She cited legal precedents and constitutional clauses, navigating the complexities of the case with the precision of someone far beyond her years. The seasoned attorneys who had mocked her earlier now scrambled to take notes, their skepticism replaced with awe. Judge Grayson's smug expression faded into one of disbelief. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice betraying his confusion. "I'm Amelia Carter," she replied, her eyes steady, "and I'm here to defend my client." The courtroom erupted into murmurs once more, the tension in the air palpable. Judge Grayson banged his gavel, demanding order, but his own composure seemed to falter. Who was this girl, and how had she managed to hold the courtroom captive? Before anyone could ask further questions, the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open, revealing a tall man in a sharp suit. He walked with purpose, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Your Honor," he said, his deep voice cutting through the chaos, "I believe I can clarify this situation." A twist of fate. Amelia's heart sank as she recognized the man, Daniel Hayes, a representative from the Bar Association. He carried a briefcase and an air of authority that silenced the room. Judge Grayson raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Hayes, I assume you're here to address this." irregularity. Hayes nodded. Indeed, Your Honor. We received an anonymous tip about an unlicensed individual attempting to represent a client in court. Naturally, we take this matter very seriously. The courtroom buzzed with speculation, and Amelia felt her confidence waver. She had worked tirelessly to prepare for this moment, but now it seemed her efforts might be in vain. Clutching the stack of papers, she braced herself for the fallout. Your Honor, Amelia interjected, her voice steady despite the fear knotting in her stomach. My qualifications may be unconventional, but my argument is sound. My client deserves a fair defense. Judge Grayson sighed, his irritation evident. Miss Carter, this is a court of law. We don't operate on passion alone. Do you have anything to say for yourself, Mr. Hayes? Before Hayes could respond, the doors opened again, and a young boy rushed in, clutching a crumpled envelope. Amelia, he called, his voice breaking the tense silence. Amelia's heart sank as she recognized Ethan, James's 10-year-old son. He ran to her side, thrusting the envelope into her hands. You forgot this, he whispered, his wide eyes filled with trust. The letter. Amelia stared at the envelope, her hands trembling. She knew what it contained. A letter James had written to her from prison, urging her to follow her dreams and fight for justice. It was a reminder of why she had started this journey in the first place. Judge Grayson's voice cut through the silence. Miss Carter, what's in that envelope? Amelia hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Finally, she unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. James's words echoed through the courtroom, a testament to his belief in her potential and his unwavering hope for a better future. By the time she finished, the courtroom was silent. Even Judge Grayson seemed moved, his stern expression softening. Miss Carter, he said, his voice measured, your dedication is commendable. While this court cannot overlook the rules, your argument and evidence have earned my respect. The verdict. Though she wasn't allowed to continue representing her client, Amelia's efforts had set the wheels of justice in motion. Mr. Peterson's case was reassigned to a competent attorney, and Amelia's evidence proved instrumental in his eventual acquittal. Amelia's story spread far beyond the courtroom, inspiring countless others to stand up for what they believed in, regardless of their circumstances. As for Amelia, she continued her studies, determined to one day become the lawyer James had always envisioned her to be. It was clear that courage and determination can overcome even the most insurmountable odds. A rising star. 2 months later, the courtroom incident had become a local legend. Articles dubbed Amelia Carter the teen legal prodigy, and her name became a symbol of audacity and courage. But while others basked in her fame, Amelia remained focused, doubling down on her studies. She had begun spending her evenings at the local library, poring over more legal texts. Occasionally, law students from nearby universities stopped by, drawn by curiosity. Some asked questions, others offered advice, and a few outright challenged her. Amelia thrived in these debates, sharpening her skills with every interaction. One day, a woman named Marissa Tate, a defense attorney known for championing underprivileged clients, walked into the library. She'd heard about Amelia through a colleague and wanted to meet her. Approaching the corner table where Amelia was buried in a textbook, Marissa cleared her throat. Amelia Carter, she asked. Amelia looked up, her eyes wary but curious. Yes, that's me. Marissa smiled and extended a hand. I'm Marissa Tate. I've been following your story. Do you have a moment? Amelia hesitated, but her curiosity got the better of her. Sure, she said, closing her book. Marissa sat down, her sharp suit and polished demeanor an instant contrast to Amelia's hoodie and jeans. You've made waves, she began, but you're walking a dangerous line. Representing someone in court without a license is a serious offense. I know, Amelia admitted, her voice firm. But I didn't have a choice. Mr. Peterson needed help, and no one else was listening. Marissa nodded. Your instincts are good, but passion alone isn't enough. If you're serious about this, You need proper training." Amelia's eyes lit up. "I am serious. I want to become a lawyer, but I don't know where to start." Marissa reached into her bag and handed Amelia a business card. "Come to my office tomorrow. Let's see what we can do." The apprenticeship. The next day, Amelia found herself in a bustling downtown law firm. Marissa greeted her warmly and introduced her to the team. "Consider this your unofficial internship," Marissa explained. "You'll shadow us, learn the ropes, and see what it takes to work within the system." For the first time, Amelia was surrounded by professionals who treated her with respect. She attended client meetings, observed court hearings, and even assisted with research. Though she wasn't allowed to take the lead, she soaked up every lesson like a sponge. One case hit particularly close to home. A young man named Devon, wrongly accused of theft, had been denied a proper defense due to lack of funds. As Marissa prepared his case, Amelia couldn't help but see echoes of her brother James. She stayed late into the night, combing through evidence and drafting notes. "Amelia," Marissa said one evening, finding her asleep at her desk, "you're putting in more hours than most of my associates." Amelia blinked awake, her cheeks flushing. "I just want to help." Marissa smiled. "And you are. But remember, balance is key. Burnout won't help anyone." The test of integrity. 6 months into her apprenticeship, Amelia faced her first ethical dilemma. Marissa's firm was handling a high-profile case involving a corporate executive accused of environmental violations. During a late-night review of documents, Amelia discovered an overlooked email chain that painted the executive in a damning light. She hesitated. Bringing it to light could ruin the case, and potentially the firm's reputation. But withholding it felt wrong. The next morning, she approached Marissa. "I found something you need to see," she said, handing over the emails. Marissa read through them, her expression darkening. "This could change everything," she murmured. "The client might walk away from us." Amelia swallowed hard. "I know, but isn't it our job to seek the truth?" Marissa studied her for a long moment before nodding. "You're right. Integrity matters more than winning. We'll present this to the court." Though the firm lost the case, Amelia earned the respect of her colleagues and a deeper understanding of the moral complexities of the law. A chance to shine. As Amelia's reputation grew, so did her opportunities. One day, Marissa approached her with a proposition. "There's a community legal aid clinic looking for volunteers. It's not glamorous, but it's good work. Interested?" Amelia didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." At the clinic, she worked with people from all walks of life. Single mothers fighting for custody, tenants facing unfair evictions, and immigrants navigating complex legal systems. Though she still couldn't formally represent anyone, her knowledge and dedication made her an invaluable asset. One case stood out. A young woman named Sophia, who had been falsely accused of shoplifting. The store's surveillance footage had mysteriously gone missing, and the prosecution was relying solely on eyewitness testimony. Amelia dove into the case, uncovering inconsistencies in the witnesses' statements. With Marissa's guidance, she prepared a detailed report that ultimately led to Sophia's exoneration. "How did you do it?" Sophia asked, tears in her eyes. Amelia smiled. "Sometimes, all it takes is someone willing to look a little closer." A legacy in the making. By the time Amelia turned 18, she had achieved more than most people twice her age. She passed the GED and enrolled in a pre-law program at a local college, balancing her studies with continued work at the legal aid clinic. On the anniversary of James's conviction, Amelia visited his grave, clutching a framed certificate of her acceptance into law school. "I did it, James," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm going to make you proud." She knelt by the headstone, laying a small bouquet of daisies, his favorite flowers. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the cemetery, Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for James anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been silenced, overlooked, or wronged. The moral. Amelia Carter's journey wasn't just about becoming a lawyer. It was about resilience, integrity, and the power of belief. Her story served as a reminder that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the determination to act despite it. And though the road ahead was long, one thing was certain: Amelia was destined to leave an indelible mark on the world. Breaking barriers. Amelia Carter stood on the steps of a sprawling courthouse, its imposing facade a symbol of both power and the obstacles she was determined to overcome. At 19, she was now in her second year of law school, juggling rigorous coursework with her commitment to the community legal aid clinic. The whispers about her courtroom debut as a teenager had faded, but her resolve to make a difference had only strengthened. Today, however, was different. A new challenge loomed, one that would test not only her legal knowledge but her ability to confront deeply entrenched systemic flaws. The case that changed everything. The case involved a young man named Jordan Morales, a college student arrested during a peaceful protest advocating for environmental justice. Accused of inciting violence, Jordan faced years in prison if convicted. His family, unable to afford a high-profile defense team, turned to the legal aid clinic for help. Amelia had read about Jordan's case in the news before it landed on her desk. The media portrayed him as a troublemaker, but as she sifted through the evidence, she saw a different story. Video footage showed him standing calmly at the protest's forefront, holding a sign that read, "Protect our planet." Witness accounts described a scuffle breaking out far behind him. Yet Jordan had been singled out as the instigator. Why him? Amelia muttered to herself late one evening, poring over court documents. The question nagged at her. Why target someone so clearly uninvolved in the chaos? When she met Jordan for the first time, she found him to be quiet and articulate, his eyes wary but determined. "They're trying to make an example out of me," he said. "I'm not the first, and I won't be the last." Amelia leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly. "Then let's make sure they don't succeed." Building the defense. Amelia threw herself into the case with relentless energy. She combed through hours of protest footage, consulted with environmental activists, and even visited the site of the protest to better understand what had happened. Her professors noticed her heightened focus and began offering their support, impressed by her dedication. One of the key pieces of evidence was a grainy surveillance video from a nearby store. Though it was difficult to make out faces, Amelia noticed a critical detail. The scuffle that had prompted the charges didn't start near Jordan. It had begun several feet away, involving a group of people he had no connection to. "This changes everything," she said during a late-night strategy meeting with Marissa Tate, who had agreed to mentor her through the case. Marissa nodded, her expression serious. "It's compelling, but it won't be enough on its own. We need to challenge the prosecution's narrative from every angle." Together, they worked tirelessly, crafting a defense that not only refuted the charges but highlighted the broader implications of targeting peaceful protesters. For Amelia, this wasn't just about Jordan, it was about holding the system accountable. The trial. The courtroom was packed on the first day of Jordan's trial. Activists, journalists, and curious onlookers filled the seats, eager to see how the case would unfold. Amelia, still a law student, wasn't allowed to argue in court, but she sat directly behind Marissa, her presence a steady reminder of the work that had brought them there. Marissa began by dismantling the prosecution's narrative piece by piece. She called witnesses who testified to Jordan's peaceful demeanor and presented the surveillance footage as evidence. But the turning point came when Amelia's research uncovered an internal memo from local law enforcement, instructing officers to target high-profile agitators to deter future protests. When Marissa revealed the memo in court, the room erupted in gasps. Judge Carter banged his gavel for order, but the damage to the prosecution's case was done. The memo painted a damning picture of intentional bias and overreach, casting doubt on the charges against Jordan. A personal victory. As the trial progressed, Amelia couldn't shake the memories of her brother James. She had seen firsthand how the justice system could destroy lives. And now, she was part of a team fighting to prevent history from repeating itself. On the final day of the trial, Marissa delivered a closing argument that brought tears to Amelia's eyes. "This case is about more than Jordan Morel's," Marissa said, her voice firm but compassionate. "It's about the right to speak, to protest, to demand a better world. If we allow fear to dictate justice, we undermine the very foundation of our society." The jury deliberated for 2 tense days before returning with a verdict: not guilty. Cheers erupted in the courtroom as Jordan hugged his family, tears streaming down his face. Amelia felt a wave of relief and pride wash over her. For the first time, she truly understood the power of perseverance and the impact of a well-fought legal battle. The ripple effect. Jordan's acquittal became a rallying cry for activists across the country. News outlets covered the trial extensively, shining a spotlight on the systemic issues Amelia and Marissa had exposed. Donations poured into the legal aid clinic, allowing them to expand their services and take on more cases like Jordan's. Amelia, however, wasn't content to rest on her laurels. She saw the victory as a stepping stone, not an endpoint. With Marissa's encouragement, she began speaking at schools and community centers, sharing her story and inspiring others to fight for justice. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she often said during her speeches, "but it starts with one voice, one step, and the courage to keep going, even when the odds are against you." A new challenge. Just as Amelia began to settle into her growing role as an advocate, she received an unexpected letter. It was from a prestigious law firm in Washington, D.C., offering her a summer internship. The firm specialized in civil rights cases and had a reputation for taking on high-stakes battles. Amelia was torn. The opportunity was a dream come true, but it meant leaving the community she had come to love, even if only temporarily. After much deliberation and a heart-to-heart conversation with Marissa, she decided to accept. "Go," Marissa said with a smile. "You've done incredible work here, but the world is bigger than this city. Learn everything you can and bring it back." The road ahead. As Amelia packed her bags for Washington, she felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The journey that had begun in her small bedroom, surrounded by her brother's law books, had brought her further than she ever imagined. But she knew this was only the beginning. Standing on the platform at the train station, she looked at Ethan, now a teenager himself, who had come to see her off. "You're going to change the world, Amelia," he said, his voice filled with admiration. She smiled, ruffling his hair. "Only if we all do our part." As the train pulled away, Amelia stared out the window, her mind racing with possibilities. She wasn't just chasing a career. She was building a legacy. One case, one client, one act of courage at a time. And no matter where the road led, she was ready to face it head-on. The moral. Amelia's story is a testament to the power of determination and the ripple effects of fighting for what's right. Her journey reminds us that true change begins with individuals willing to challenge the status quo, armed with nothing more than passion, resilience, and an unwavering belief in justice. The voice of a movement. The summer in Washington, D.C. was sweltering, but the city buzzed with the energy of change. Amelia Carter stepped out of Union Station with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a notebook tucked under her arm. The grandeur of the Capitol loomed in the distance, a reminder of the history she was about to be a part of. This wasn't just a summer internship, it was the next chapter in her journey toward justice. Her destination was the prestigious Hamilton and Crane law firm, renowned for its work in civil rights litigation. Despite her growing confidence, Amelia couldn't shake the nervous excitement as she approached the sleek glass building. Inside, she was greeted by a receptionist who directed her to the 15th floor. When the elevator doors opened, a bustling office greeted her. Lawyers in tailored suits hurried between desks. Interns balanced stacks of files, and the sound of phones ringing created a constant hum. Amid the chaos, Amelia felt a sense of belonging. She had fought her way here, and now it was time to prove she deserved the opportunity. The learning curve. Amelia's first few weeks were a whirlwind. The firm was handling several high-profile cases, including a class action lawsuit against a major corporation accused of discriminatory hiring practices. Amelia was assigned to assist a senior attorney named Eleanor Harris, a sharp and unyielding woman who had built a reputation as one of the best litigators in the country. Eleanor wasted no time testing Amelia's capabilities. "I don't care if you're the youngest person here," she said on Amelia's first day. "If you're in this office, you're expected to deliver. Show me what you've got." The pressure was immense, but Amelia thrived. She reviewed case files late into the night, drafting memos and conducting meticulous research. Eleanor was demanding but fair, and over time, a mutual respect grew between them. "You're sharper than most of the associates here," Eleanor said one evening as they prepared for a deposition. "But don't let that go to your head. This job is as much about listening as it is about speaking." Amelia nodded, taking the advice to heart. Every day was an opportunity to learn, and she soaked up knowledge like a sponge. The case that struck a nerve. Midway through her internship, Amelia was assigned to a pro bono case representing a group of tenants in a low-income housing complex. The landlord, a powerful real estate developer, had neglected the property for years, allowing unsafe conditions to persist while collecting exorbitant rent. When the tenants organized to demand improvements, they were slapped with eviction notices. The case reminded Amelia of her own childhood home, where her family had once struggled to make ends meet. She saw her younger self and the children living in the complex, their futures hanging in the balance. Determined to make a difference, she poured her energy into the case, working closely with the tenants to gather evidence. One tenant, an elderly woman named Mrs. Alvarez, became a key figure in their case. She had kept meticulous records of maintenance requests and unfulfilled promises from the landlord. Amelia visited Mrs. Alvarez's apartment, taking photos of moldy walls, broken windows, and exposed wiring. "This isn't just about us," Mrs. Alvarez told her, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's about showing them they can't treat people like this." Facing the giant. As the case gained traction, the landlord's legal team, a formidable group from one of the largest firms in the country, attempted to intimidate the tenants into dropping their lawsuit. They sent cease and desist letters, questioned the credibility of the tenants, and even filed motions to dismiss the case. Amelia refused to back down. Under Eleanor's guidance, she helped craft a compelling argument that exposed the landlord's negligence and the systemic issues at play. During one particularly intense meeting, Eleanor turned to Amelia. "You've done most of the legwork on this case," she said. "How would you feel about presenting our findings in court?" Amelia's heart raced. She was still a law student, and the thought of speaking in front of a judge was daunting. But this was her chance to step up. "I'd be honored," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. The courtroom battle. The day of the hearing arrived, and the courtroom was packed with tenants, reporters, and curious onlookers. Amelia stood at the plaintiff's table, her palms sweating but her resolve unshaken. When it was her turn to speak, she rose, clutching her notes. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and confident, "this case is about more than a group of tenants fighting for basic human dignity. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that those with power cannot exploit those without it." She presented evidence with precision, citing legal precedents and referencing Mrs. Alvarez's meticulous records. The landlord's attorneys tried to undermine her, but she countered their arguments with calm authority. By the end of her presentation, the courtroom was silent. Even the opposing counsel seemed taken aback by her composure. A victory for justice. The judge ruled in favor of the tenants, ordering the landlord to make immediate repairs and halting the evictions. The courtroom erupted in applause, and Amelia felt a wave of relief and pride. Mrs. Alvarez hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You gave us our voices back," she said. For Amelia, the victory was about more than winning a case. It was proof that determination, preparation, and a willingness to fight for what's right could create real change. A new purpose. As her internship came to an end, Amelia received an offer to return to Hamilton and Crane after graduating law school. It was a prestigious opportunity, but Amelia hesitated. Her heart was still in the communities that needed her most. After much deliberation, she decided to chart her own path. With the help of mentors like Eleanor and Marissa, she began laying the groundwork for a nonprofit legal organization dedicated to providing affordable legal services to underserved communities. She named it the Carter Justice Initiative, in honor of her brother James. The power of one. Years later, Amelia stood on a stage at a national legal conference, addressing an audience of seasoned attorneys, young law students, and activists. She spoke about the tenants, Jordan Morales, and the countless others who had inspired her journey. "The law is a tool," she said, her voice strong and steady. "It can be wielded to oppress or to liberate. It's up to us to decide how we use it." As the audience rose to their feet in applause, Amelia felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her journey had been far from easy, but every obstacle had shaped her into the person she was today. A voice for the voiceless, a champion of justice, and proof that one person can make a difference. The moral. Amelia's story is a powerful reminder that resilience, empathy, and a commitment to justice can break barriers and transform lives. Her journey underscores the importance of using one's talents to uplift others, showing us that true success lies in the impact we leave on the world around us. The catalyst for change. The Carter Justice Initiative, Amelia's nonprofit legal organization, grew rapidly in its first few years. What began as a modest operation run out of a borrowed office quickly expanded into a multi-state network of attorneys, advocates, and volunteers committed to providing legal services to underserved communities. The initiative's motto, "Justice for all, not just the few," resonated deeply, attracting both clients and supporters. But success brought new challenges. With more cases pouring in than the team could handle, Amelia found herself at a crossroads, faced with difficult decisions that would test her vision, leadership, and resolve. The strain of leadership. Amelia sat at her desk late one evening, papers strewn across the surface. The dim glow of her desk lamp illuminated case files marked URGNT, while her laptop displayed an inbox flooded with requests for help. Her head ached, but she couldn't bring herself to stop. Every unread email felt like a plea she was failing to answer. A knock on the door startled her. It was Marissa Tate, who had remained a trusted mentor and now served as a board member for the initiative. "You're still here," Marissa said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. Amelia leaned back in her chair, exhausted but smiling faintly. "There's just so much to do. I can't let people down." Marissa crossed her arms, her expression firm but compassionate. "You're trying to carry everything yourself. That's not sustainable, Amelia." "I know," Amelia admitted, her voice tinged with frustration. "But how do I decide who gets help and who doesn't? Every case feels urgent." Marissa pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "You're not alone in this. Lean on your team. Trust them. And remember, making systemic change requires more than winning individual cases. You need to focus on the bigger picture." Her words planted a seed in Amelia's mind, one that would soon grow into a bold new strategy. Shifting the focus. Inspired by Marissa's advice, Amelia convened her leadership team to discuss a new direction. "We're making the difference," she began, addressing the group, "but we're playing defense. It's time we go on the offensive." She proposed a two-pronged approach: continue providing direct legal aid to those in need, while simultaneously pursuing strategic litigation and advocacy efforts to challenge unjust laws and policies at their root. The team was energized by the idea, and soon, the initiative launched its first major campaign, a lawsuit against a state that had implemented voter ID laws disproportionately affecting marginalized communities. The case, which garnered national attention, sought not only to overturn the law, but to highlight the broader issue of voter suppression. The power of collaboration. Recognizing that systemic change required more than legal action, Amelia began forging partnerships with community organizations, educators, and policymakers. She hosted town halls, inviting residents to share their stories and propose solutions. She worked with activists to organize workshops on knowing one's rights, empowering people to advocate for themselves. One such workshop took Amelia back to her roots. In a crowded community center in her hometown, she stood before a group of young people, many of whom reminded her of herself at 16, eager, uncertain, and full of potential. "You don't have to wait for someone else to fight for you," she told them. "You have more power than you realize. Learn the system, understand your rights, and use your voice." After the session, a young girl named Kayla approached her. "I want to be like you," Kayla said shyly. "But I don't think I'm smart enough." Amelia knelt to meet her eye level. "I used to think the same thing," she said. "But being smart isn't about knowing everything. It's about being curious, working hard, and never giving up. You can do anything if you believe in yourself." Kayla's smile lit up the room, and Amelia knew she had just met someone who would one day carry the torch. A national movement. As the Carter Justice Initiative expanded, so did its influence. Amelia became a sought-after speaker, addressing conferences, universities, and even Congress. Her advocacy brought her to the steps of the Supreme Court, where she watched as the justices deliberated on a case her organization had brought forward, a challenge to the discriminatory voter ID laws. The court's ruling in their favor was a landmark victory, not just for the initiative, but for millions of disenfranchised voters. The decision underscored the power of perseverance and collaboration, and Amelia's name became synonymous with modern civil rights advocacy. But with each victory came new challenges. Opponents of her work accused her of overstepping, of politicizing the law. She faced threats, lawsuits, and public scrutiny. Yet, she refused to back down. "Justice isn't comfortable," she said in an interview. "It's messy, it's challenging, and it's often unpopular. But that doesn't mean it isn't worth fighting for." Personal sacrifices. Behind the scenes, Amelia grappled with the personal toll of her work. Long hours and constant travel strained her relationships. She rarely saw her parents, who had retired to a quiet town, or her best friend Lily, who now had a family of her own. One evening, as Amelia sat alone in her office, Ethan, now a college student studying sociology, called her. "You're doing amazing things, Amelia," he said, "but don't forget to take care of yourself. You're allowed to have a life outside of this." His words struck a chord. Amelia realized that while her work was important, so was her well-being. She began carving out time for herself, reconnecting with loved ones, and pursuing hobbies like painting, which she hadn't done since she was a teenager. The next generation. Years later, Amelia stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Carter Justice Initiative's new headquarters, a sprawling facility designed to house legal clinics, training programs, and advocacy offices. The event was attended by supporters, clients, and former colleagues, all of whom had played a role in the organization's success. As she looked out at the crowd, Amelia spotted Kayla, now a law student interning with the initiative. Their eyes met, and Kayla smiled, radiating the same determination Amelia had seen years ago. In her speech, Amelia reflected on her journey. "This organization isn't just about me," she said. "It's about all of us. It's about the power of community, the strength of resilience, and the belief that justice is a right, not a privilege. Together, we've built something extraordinary, and together, we'll continue to change the world." The legacy. Amelia Carter's story became a blueprint for others seeking to create change. Her work inspired a new generation of activists, lawyers, and leaders who carried her vision forward. Through her dedication, she proved that one person's determination could ignite a movement, transforming lives and reshaping the world for the better. And though her journey was far from over, Amelia knew she had already accomplished her greatest goal, empowering others to believe in their own ability to make a difference. A global stage. Years had passed since Amelia Carter first stood in a courtroom as a teenager, defying expectations and proving that justice could be championed by anyone with enough determination. Now, at the age of 32, she stood before an audience of thousands at the United Nations headquarters in New York City, her story transcending borders and inspiring movements around the world. The occasion was the annual Global Justice Summit, where leaders, activists, and visionaries gathered to address systemic inequities across nations. Amelia had been invited to deliver the keynote address, a recognition not just of her personal accomplishments, but of the Carter Justice Initiative's growing international impact. The speech that moved the world. As she approached the podium, Amelia paused, letting the weight of the moment settle over her. Her tailored suit and composed demeanor reflected the maturity of a seasoned advocate, but in her heart, she still felt like the scrappy teenager who had first dared to challenge authority. Distinguished delegates, honored guests, and fellow dreamers, she began, her voice steady and resolute. Justice is not bound by borders. It does not belong to one nation or one group. It is a universal right, as essential as the air we breathe and the water we drink. She spoke of her brother James, and the spark his wrongful conviction had ignited within her. She recounted the stories of the tenants, activists, and families she had fought for, weaving their struggles into a larger narrative about the global fight for equity. But justice, she continued, her tone shifting, is more than a courtroom victory. It's access to education, healthcare, clean water, and the ability to live free from fear. It's dismantling the systems that perpetuate inequality and rebuilding them with compassion and fairness at their core. Her words resonated deeply, and by the time she finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation, applause echoing through the grand hall. Amelia had once dreamed of making a difference in her community. Now her vision extended to the entire world. A global network. Following her speech, representatives from various countries approached Amelia, eager to collaborate. Leaders from emerging nations sought guidance on establishing similar legal aid networks, while activists shared stories of parallel struggles in their own regions. One such leader was Dr. Leela Patel, an environmental lawyer from India who had been fighting against illegal land grabs in rural communities. "Your work has inspired us," Leela said, shaking Amelia's hand. "We face many of the same challenges, but together, I believe we can create a global alliance for justice." Amelia embraced the idea. Over the next year, she spearheaded the formation of the International Justice Alliance, IJ, a coalition of nonprofits, grassroots organizations, and legal professionals dedicated to combating injustice on a global scale. The alliance focused on issues ranging from human trafficking to environmental degradation, pooling resources and expertise to tackle systemic problems. The fight against exploitation. One of the IJA's first major campaigns was against multinational corporations exploiting labor in developing countries. Reports had surfaced of workers, including children, enduring inhumane conditions in factories producing goods for Western markets. Amelia traveled to Southeast Asia, meeting with workers, local advocates, and government officials. She visited cramped, sweltering factories where people toiled for pennies, their lives dictated by the demands of a profit-driven system. One worker, a young woman named Mai, shared her story through a translator. "I work 14 hours a day," Mai said, her voice trembling. "I barely earn enough to feed my family. But if I speak out, I'll lose my job." May's words haunted Amelia. She knew that legal battles alone wouldn't solve such deeply entrenched issues. The fight required systemic change, including corporate accountability and stronger labor protections. The IJA launched a multi-pronged campaign, filing lawsuits against corporations, lobbying for international labor reform, and mobilizing consumers to demand ethical practices. The campaign gained momentum, drawing attention from media outlets and human rights organizations worldwide. A risk worth taking. The campaign wasn't without its dangers. Powerful interests pushed back, threatening lawsuits and even personal harm. Late one night, Amelia received an anonymous message warning her to back off or face the consequences. Instead of retreating, she went public with the threat. "Silence is complicity," she said in a press conference. "If standing up for what's right makes me a target, so be it. But I will not stop fighting." Her courage galvanized supporters, and within months, several corporations pledged to overhaul their supply chains, agreeing to third-party audits and improved labor conditions. It was a step forward, though Amelia knew there was still much work to be done. A personal turning point. Amid her relentless schedule, Amelia found herself grappling with questions about her own life. Her work had consumed her for over a decade, and while she was proud of what she'd accomplished, she began to wonder what else she wanted for herself. One evening, while visiting her hometown for a speaking engagement, she reconnected with Lily, her childhood best friend. They sat in Lily's backyard, reminiscing about their teenage years. "You've changed the world," Amelia lightly said, her voice filled with admiration. "But what about your world? What about you?" The question lingered long after their conversation ended. Amelia realized she had spent so much time advocating for others that she had neglected her own happiness. She began to explore ways to create balance, carving out time for family, friends, and the simple joys of life. The legacy continues. At 40, Amelia Carter was a global icon for justice, her name synonymous with hope and resilience. The Carter Justice Initiative and the International Justice Alliance had grown into formidable forces, their combined efforts improving millions of lives. But Amelia knew her work wasn't just about her. She focused on mentoring the next generation of leaders, ensuring the movement would thrive long after she stepped back. One of her mentees, Kayla, now a Harvard-trained attorney, approached Amelia during a leadership summit. "You've built something incredible," Kayla said, "but I think it's time for you to let us carry the torch." Amelia smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You're ready," she said. "I've always believed in you." A life well lived. In her later years, Amelia turned to writing, penning a memoir that chronicled her journey from a determined teenager to a global changemaker. Unbroken. The Pursuit of Justice became a bestseller, inspiring readers around the world to fight for what they believed in. As she sat in her garden one sunny afternoon, surrounded by the laughter of her nieces, nephews, and godchildren, Amelia reflected on her life. She had faced insurmountable odds, made sacrifices, and endured hardships. But she had also experienced triumphs, built lasting relationships, and witnessed the power of collective action. Justice isn't just about the law, she often told those she mentored. It's about humanity. It's about lifting each other up and never forgetting that every voice matters. Amelia Carter's legacy reminds us that true change is both a marathon and a relay. It requires boldness, collaboration, and a willingness to pass the baton to those who follow. Her life serves as a testament to the idea that no matter where you begin, with passion and perseverance, you can leave the world better than you found it. A legacy of justice. Amelia Carter's story came full circle on a quiet spring morning as she stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Global Center for Justice and Advocacy. The sprawling facility in Washington, D.C., was a culmination of decades of work, a physical testament to the impact of her life's mission. Its halls would house legal aid clinics, classrooms for aspiring lawyers and advocates, and offices for international coalitions fighting systemic injustice. As she prepared to deliver her remarks, she felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a milestone for her. It was a symbol of what collective determination could achieve. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward to address the audience. A parting message. "Today is not about me," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's about us, all of us who believe in the power of justice to transform lives and create a better world. This center is not just a building. It's a promise that no one will be silenced, overlooked, or forgotten." Amelia paused, scanning the crowd. She saw familiar faces, her mentors, her team, her family, and new ones, young people who were just beginning their own journeys. When I was 16, she continued, I walked into a courtroom feeling like the smallest person in the world. But I learned something that day. Justice doesn't belong to the powerful alone. It belongs to anyone willing to stand up and fight for it. And while one voice can spark a change, it's the chorus of many voices that sustains it. Her words resonated deeply, and as she concluded her speech, the audience rose to their feet, their applause a celebration of her unwavering commitment to fairness and equality. A life's work passed on. After the ceremony, Amelia spent hours speaking with attendees, sharing stories and advice. One young woman, a recent law school graduate, approached her with tears in her eyes. You've inspired me to believe that I can make a difference, she said, but it feels overwhelming sometimes. How did you keep going? Amelia smiled gently. There were moments when I felt overwhelmed too, she admitted. But I reminded myself that change isn't about fixing everything at once. It's about doing what you can, where you are, with what you have. And when you focus on the people you're helping, the work becomes its own reward. A quiet transition. In the months that followed, Amelia began stepping back from her leadership roles, entrusting the Carter Justice Initiative and the International Justice Alliance to a new generation of leaders. She stayed involved as an advisor, but she knew it was time for others to take the reins. Her days became quieter, but no less meaningful. She wrote, mentored, and spent time with family and friends. She often visited communities she had once fought for, not as an advocate, but as a witness to the change her work had helped bring about. The final lesson. Amelia's life became a story told in classrooms, courtrooms, and conferences worldwide. A story of resilience, courage, and the enduring belief that justice is a right, not a privilege. Her journey imparted a profound lesson. True justice is not a destination, but a practice. It requires constant vigilance, collaboration, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. And while one person can ignite a movement, it is the collective effort of many that ensures its lasting impact. A legacy that lives on. Amelia Carter passed away peacefully at the age of 84, surrounded by loved ones and the fruits of her life's work. Her memorial service was attended by people from all walks of life. Former clients, colleagues, students, and strangers whose lives had been touched by her tireless advocacy. In her honor, the Carter Justice Initiative established the Amelia Carter Fellowship, a program dedicated to training young advocates from marginalized communities. Her words, etched into the entrance of the Global Center for Justice and Advocacy, continued to inspire. Justice begins with a single voice. Let it be yours. Amelia's story is a reminder that the pursuit of justice is both a personal and collective endeavor. It teaches us that no matter our background, we all have the power to create change. Through courage, resilience, and compassion, we can leave the world better than we found it. A lesson not just for lawyers and advocates, but for anyone who dares to believe in a fairer, kinder future. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.